What's your earliest gaming memory? Not your favorite game, not the best game you ever played. I mean, the first game you actually remember feeling. For me, it was Sonic. I grew up in the late 80s and early 90s, and I can still picture the whole thing perfectly. Sitting on the living room floor, TV set to channel 3, booting up the Sega Genesis, hearing the iconic Sega startup sound blast through the speakers. Sega! I was probably 5 or 6 years old, and for that moment, I was locked in. Now, obviously Mario was a huge part of my childhood too, but Sonic hit different for me. The speed, the attitude, the music, even the level design felt unlike anything else at that time. To this day, I still randomly catch myself humming tracks from Marble Zone or Starlight Zone like some kind of sleeper agent activation code. If you know, you know. And I played everything. Sonic 1, Sonic 2, Sonic 3, Spinball. Honestly, if Sonic was on the cover, I was probably playing it. Didn't even matter if the game was good. So naturally, you'd think I stayed a lifelong Sonic fan. But somewhere along the way, I stopped. Life happened. New consoles came out, different games took over. I got super competitive for a while. Online shooters, ranked playlists, grinding wins at 2 in the morning like I was about to go pro despite having work in a few hours. And eventually, even that phase faded too. I got older, had kids, life got busier, and somewhere in all of that, I found platinum hunting. That became the new chase. Not climbing ranked ladders anymore. Chasing completion instead, chasing mastery, chasing that feeling of fully conquering a game. And after nearly 100 platinums across basically every genre imaginable, I thought I had gaming figured out. I thought gaming to me was about achievement, about completion, about the hunt. And look, I still love the hunt. That never changed. But somewhere along the way, I think trophy hunting started changing the way I experience games too. Because if you're a platinum hunter, you probably know exactly what I mean when I say this. Sometimes the platinum becomes the experience. You stop exploring naturally, you stop slowing down, you stop asking, is this fun? And start asking, what's the fastest route to cleanup? There are games I've platinumed that I barely even remember afterward. That sounds horrible to admit out loud, but it's true. Then I played Sonic Frontiers, and something happened that I genuinely wasn't expecting. Because this wasn't just another platinum. This game reminded me why I fell in love with gaming in the first place. So let me set the scene a little bit. Sonic Frontiers is this weird mix of action platformer, semi-open world game, and light RPG systems. Which honestly sounds ridiculous on paper because we're talking about Sonic here. But somehow, it works. The first island is massive, green, open, and honestly kind of beautiful in a way I wasn't expecting. Sunlight bouncing off the grass, rails twisting through the sky, floating platforms way off in the distance, making your brain immediately go, okay, how the hell do I get over there? And that curiosity became the entire gameplay loop for me. You'd see something in the distance, launch yourself across half the map trying to reach it, accidentally discover 3 other things on the way there, completely forget what you were originally doing, and somehow still end up having a great time. And honestly, watching my footage back later, I realized how often I completely ignored objectives just because I saw some random rail in the distance and thought, yeah, I gotta see where that goes. That's when I realized this probably wasn't going to be a normal Platinum Journey video, because movement itself became fun enough to carry the experience. The later islands all had their own identity too. The second island has this desert canyon atmosphere, where you're blasting through these narrow rock formations at ridiculous speeds before suddenly opening into these huge empty spaces again. Completely different energy from the first island. The third island though, that was the first time I felt even a little fatigue set in. Not because it was bad, it wasn't, but because the island was huge. And there was definitely moments where I was boosting around wondering if I was lost or if the game was lost. Still not entirely sure, honestly. And then the fourth island happens, and suddenly the game starts demanding movement skills from you that it absolutely could not have expected from you at the beginning. Everything becomes more vertical, faster, more technical. You're chaining mechanics together naturally without even thinking about it. And watching the footage back later honestly surprised me a little bit, because there is no chance early game me could have handled some of those platforming sections. Without realizing it, I've gotten significantly better at controlling Sonic over the course of the game. And that's a good progression design. Not because the game tells you you're improving, because one day you suddenly realize, oh damn, I'm kind of cooking now. Now, one thing that completely caught me off guard, this game has a skill tree in a Sonic game. That sentence still sounds fake to me, but honestly, it worked way better than I expected. The abilities aren't insanely deep or anything, but they add enough variety that leveling Sonic up actually feels meaningful. There was even one skill that basically automated combos for you, which, as somebody who button mashes through most action games like an exhausted father fighting for his life, I appreciated. But I do have one criticism here. The progression ends too early. And weirdly enough, that bothered me specifically because I was enjoying it. By the end of the second island, I had basically unlocked almost everything already outside of one story-related ability. And honestly, that disappointed me. Not because the system was bad, because I wanted more of it. More abilities, more upgrades, more reason to keep investing into Sonic's progression. And the fact that my complaint is basically I wish there was more of this says a lot about how well the system worked for me overall. The game also lets you level up things like speed, attack, defense, and ring capacity. And listen, the first stat I maxed out was speed. Not because a trophy told me to, because once this game gets into your bloodstream a little bit, all you want to do is go faster. That's when I realized Frontiers understood something important. The best progression systems make players want to grind naturally. Not because a checklist says so, because the gameplay itself makes you chase the feeling. And honestly, the entire structure of this game is built around that idea. Almost every collectible actually matters. Music notes unlock songs, cogwheels unlock portal stages, Cocos upgrade stats, purple coins unlock fishing. Everything feeds back into progression somehow. And as someone who has played a lot of open world games overloaded with meaningless collectibles, I appreciated that immediately. Nothing really felt like filler. Even unlocking the map was more interactive than I expected. Instead of climbing a tower and instantly revealing everything Ubisoft style, I'm looking at you, Assassin's Creed, Frontiers gives you these little environmental puzzles. None of them are difficult, but they're just engaging enough to keep your brain involved. And I think that became one of the biggest surprises for me overall. Frontiers constantly tries to keep the player participating instead of just following markers around. And eventually, the game clicked. You know that feeling when a game stops feeling like button inputs and just starts feeling instinctual? That happened to me somewhere during the first island. The controller basically disappeared. I wasn't consciously thinking anymore. My hands just knew where Sonic needed to go. And that was the moment I realized why this game worked for me. Because traversal is the game. Running across walls, launching off rails, flying halfway across the map after accidentally chaining together multiple mechanics. The game constantly creates momentum. And what surprised me most rewatching my footage later was how relaxed I was playing it. Seriously, in most of my platinum footage, I'm either hyper focused or I'm quietly suffering. This footage looked different. I was just comfortable, like I was actually unwinding while playing. And there were nights where everyone in the house was asleep, I was exhausted from work and still found myself booting this game up for 30 minutes just to run around. Not grind, not optimize, just move. And honestly, that hit me harder than I expected. Now I do want to push back a little on one criticism I've seen people throw at this game. The criticism of the world feels empty. I honestly disagree because Sonic moves differently than most video game characters. That open space is the design. You need room for Sonic to move the way Sonic is supposed to move. If every inch of the map was packed with enemies and clutter, the movement would completely lose its flow. The emptiness creates the canvas. And while you're flying across that canvas at absurd speed, looking down at oceans and cliffs and rails spiraling through the sky, it just feels cool. Sometimes that's enough. Not every game needs to overwhelm you every second. One thing I appreciated through my entire playthrough was how forgiving the game is toward experimentation. Because trust me, you will fall off the map repeatedly, sometimes with enough speed that it honestly feels personal. But Frontier rarely punishes you harshly for it. You recover quickly, you get back into the action quickly. The game respects your time. And honestly, the older I get, the more I value that. I don't have the same patience I used to for games that punish experimentation by wasting 15 minutes of your life every time you miss a jump. Frontiers understands something important. Failure should encourage curiosity, not kill it. Now let's talk about the bosses for a second. Because the Titan fights, those were awesome. And look, I know quick time events get clowned on nowadays, but here, they worked. The Titans fights felt huge, cinematic, dramatic, almost like this weird throwback to the Xbox 360 era where games were obsessed with making you feel like the coolest person alive. And somehow that energy fits Sonic perfectly. The night boss especially surprised me. The first time I fought it, I actually thought the design looked kind of basic. But then I kind of watched the footage again and later realized the boss works because it complements Sonic's movement. The encounter is designed around speed and momentum instead of just standing there trading hits. That made the fight way more memorable than I expected. The mini bosses though, a little more mixed. Some were genuinely creative. Others definitely started repeating too much toward the later islands. It never ruined the experience for me, but there were absolutely moments where you could feel the game's ambition stretching slightly beyond its budget. Still, for Sonic's first real attempt at something this ambitious, I honestly walked away impressed. One thing that really surprised me through this platinum journey was how little I cared about trophies while actually playing. And that's weird for me to say, because usually trophy hunting becomes the focus. You stop thinking about the game itself and start thinking about efficiency, optimization, cleanup. But Frontiers kind of broke that mindset for me. I'd spend literal hours exploring islands before a single trophy popped, and I didn't care. I was too busy seeing what Sonic could do, testing movement, exploring weird structures in the distance, completely ignoring objectives because my ADHD saw a rail in the sky and went, ooh, shiny. And honestly, that's probably the biggest compliment I can give this game as a platinum hunter, because Sonic Frontiers rewards natural engagement more than forced grinding. Now, to be fair, there were a couple cleanup trophies near the end. The biggest one for me was the Phantom Rush trophy, basically forcing me to perform a combat mechanic 50 times that I barely used naturally throughout the game. And yeah, that one definitely felt like busy work, but compared to some of the truly soul-draining cleanup grinds I've suffered through in other platinums, this barely registered, honestly. Now let me talk about the music, because I have to talk about the music. Remember, I basically skipped decades of Sonic games after the Genesis era. So all the songs from Adventure, Heroes, Unleashed, all of that was completely new to me. And I was not prepared for how hard some of these tracks went. Seriously, some of these songs are absolute bangers. At one point, I realized I was actively hunting music notes, not because I needed them, but because I genuinely wanted to hear the next song. That's how strong the soundtrack is. And then you have the ambient music for each island too. Completely different vibe. More atmospheric, more reflective. The first island especially has this calm, lonely feeling to it that weirdly stuck with me. It made the world feel peaceful, almost meditative sometimes. And honestly, that atmosphere probably played a huge role in why this game affected me the way it did. Because after long work days, responsibilities, stress, kids, bills, life, sometimes it's just nice to just exist in a game world for a while. No pressure, no competition, just movement, music, and exploration. Now, the game definitely isn't perfect by any means. There were absolutely parts where you could feel the ambition outrunning the execution a little bit. The celestial events looked incredible visually, running through the sky at night with all these insane visuals happening around you. Super cool, but there just wasn't enough reason to keep engaging with them. Same thing with the time trials. I did a few early on and then basically ignored them completely afterward. And honestly, that's probably my biggest criticism overall. Sonic Frontiers feels like a game constantly flirting with greatness. You can see the potential everywhere. So after about 20 hours, the platinum finally popped. Platinum 95. And normally, that's where the relationship ends. I uninstall the game, move on, start researching the next platinum. That's the Platinum Hunter rhythm. Finish the checklist, close the chapter, on to the next one. But then something weird happened. I started editing the footage for this video, and while watching it back, I realized I missed this game. Like, genuinely missed it. Not the trophies, not the progression, not the completion checklist. I missed moving through the world. I missed the music. I missed the atmosphere. I missed the feeling of picking a random direction and just running. And honestly, actually, not honestly, genuinely, that almost never happens to me anymore. I'm even tempted to go back and fully 100% the game outside the platinum. Not for content, not for trophies, just because I genuinely enjoyed being there. And if you're somebody who loves trophy hunting but also misses when games just felt fun, I think you're gonna fit in pretty well here, because I think that's the kind of platinum journey I want this channel to focus on moving forward. Not just whether a platinum was hard, but what the experience actually leaves with you afterward. There's something this game reminded me of that I think a lot of us forget as we get older. Not every game has to be brutally difficult. Not every game has to be a masterpiece. Not every game needs to redefine the industry to matter. Sometimes a game can just be fun. And honestly, as adults, I think we lose touch with that feeling sometimes. We carry stress into our hobbies, we optimize everything, we chase difficulty, efficiency, prestige. And listen, I love difficult games too. Bloodborne, Sekiro, Elden Ring. I've platinumed all of them. Those experiences absolutely have value, and I love those games. But Sonic Frontiers reminded me of something I hadn't felt in a very long time. It reminded me of being a kid again, sitting on the living room floor, turning on channel 3, hearing that Sega startup sound, and just playing a game because it made me happy. No rank to chase, no status attached to it, no pressure, just fun, pure fun. And honestly, that feeling is probably why most of us started gaming in the first place. Years from now, I probably won't even remember every trophy tied to platinum number 95, but I'll remember hearing that music while running across those islands late at night after the whole house was asleep. I'll remember sitting there rewatching footage, realizing I missed a Sonic game of all things. And I'll remember how unexpected that feeling was. Because Sonic Frontiers probably isn't the greatest game I'll ever play, but it reminded me why I still love playing video games. And honestly, that's way more important. If you've ever had a game reconnect you with why you love gaming in the first place, let me know in the comments, because I honestly think those games hit differently as we get older. And if this is your kind of gaming conversation, not just trophies, but what these games actually leave with us afterward, then consider subscribing. Because that's what this channel is going to be about. That's what Sonic Frontiers gave me. That's what Platinum number 95 gave me. And honestly, that's what Hector the Collector is all about. I'll see you in the next one.